everybody, welcome back to the show. This is episode 10 of the Backrowsteelers show. I'm your host, Rob Sprout. Please subscribe, rate, review the podcast on whatever platform you prefer you're listening to us on. Every little subscription rating helps us out. It helps us move on up the charts. Gets a little more notice, so we get out there for your beautiful ear holes to enjoy. This podcast is basically on like all the platforms, so if you guys have friends that don't necessarily have Apple or Spotify or whatever it might be, go ahead and tell them like, hey, it's available wherever you can get it. So pass the word, get our good name out there. I would appreciate it. We're also on YouTubes as well, so if you want to go hit us up on YouTube, there's not really a video. I don't have a studio thing set up or a camera and stuff set up yet for YouTube, but we will get there eventually, so that'll be coming here in the future sometime. I think we are going to go ahead and get started with our typical show stuff. We're going to talk about some players. We're going to talk about what's going on in the organization a little bit. First and foremost, I want to go ahead and I'm going to promote James Conner's book, even though I haven't read it yet. As I'm recording, today is the 16th. Today is the day that it dropped, so I'm going to go ahead and order me some James Conner's book. Fear is a Choice is the title of the book. It is out today. I'm excited to add it to my collection of books. I'm going to go ahead and give that a read. It's an autobiography about him and his battle through cancer and stuff like that. So Fear is a Choice if you feel like going out there and getting it. James Conner, I'm giving you a little plug here, dude. I'm sure your book is great, so I'm going to buy it and read it. And everyone else, go ahead and do that too, and then let me know how you feel about it. Next up, Juju is making a brand name out of himself called Team Juju LLC. Team Juju LLC. All right. He's trying to trademark the phrase, it's Liddy. Now, I'm a little bit older, so it's Liddy's kind of like a younger generation sort of deal. But I get it. I like it. I think it'd be cool. I'd rock a Pittsburgh shirt that said, like, it's Liddy or something on it. Apparently, he's got some stuff on, like, cell phone accessories and things like that. And maybe some other apparel, too. I was trying to find some online. Not really seeing it. There's a lot of stuff that says, like, it's Liddy, and you can get, like, custom t-shirt places that make these sorts of things and stuff. But I think Juju's trying to make a big thing out of it. So hopefully he gets that going and gets the trademark, it's Liddy. In team news, as far as like ownership and stuff like that, I don't know if any of you guys saw in the news that the 76ers owners Josh Harris and David Blitzer bought it what amounts to be a less than 5% share of the Steelers organization. Doesn't really change much for them. They likely bought the vacant shares left by the current Panthers owner, David Tepper's, when he went and bought the Panthers, because he had to relinquish his shares of the Steelers when he bought the Carolina Panthers. So, basically, the Steelers organization gets some money put back in for those vacant shares, and, of course, like, the Steelers' net worth is something crazy, like $2.8 billion or something like that, so as they're getting some sort of cash revenue, all the investors and stakeholders in this Pittsburgh Steelers company are going to get some sort of cut from it. And these guys have their hands in a lot of sports organizations. They're well invested into the professional sports type areas. All right, let's move on to player news. Lots of Eric Ebron hype. That's pretty cool. I don't know if any of you guys saw the video he posted about being like a huge James Conner and Juju fan. He's pumped to be a Steeler. He had a video of him flaunting his James Conner and Juju jersey, saying he's been a fan the whole time and is excited to play with his dogs. Like, this guy was a first-round pick, like 10th overall, in fact, when he got drafted into the NFL. He went to the Lions. What Lions tight end has done good? Like, none of them. So, he kind of got like a bad rap there in Detroit. And he went to the Colts and had a great time with them. He went to the Pro Bowl in 2018 with the Colts. I think he was battling a little bit injuries here and there. Rough quarterback play. Andrew Luck retiring. It's just kind of a weird situation for him. And I think he's excited to maybe try to get a little more stability with the Pittsburgh organization. He had an ankle injury that he had surgery on and stuff toward the end of the season last year. And he's fully recovered from that. He's sprinting, he's making cuts, he's doing all the things he needs to do. So I'm pretty pumped for Eric Ebron this season, guys. It's going to be fantastic. we roll out there with like our wide receiver core, 2 tight end sets, him and nasty stiff arm Vance McDonald. We got quite the tight end room right now, so we're pretty stacked, and it's pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to this year seeing him and Vance out there just demolishing people. All right, next up on the list, let's talk a little Deon Cain. I mentioned him before about being some depth in the wide receiver room. I did a little more homework on him because I remember liking him coming out of college as a solid wide receiver prospect. The guy went to Clemson. Clemson wide receivers usually tend to do pretty well. They get touted very highly in a draft profile aspect, and rightfully so. These guys are usually really good in college, and they come in the NFL and they do good things. He kind of fell in the draft in 2018 because of some character questions due to a 2015 college football playoff drug screening that he failed. So I think some character questions came up, and he just kind of fell in the draft and wound up getting drafted 185th overall by the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I play a lot of dynasty fantasy football, and I tried to draft him in a lot of leagues. He was a monster at Clemson with mediocre play. The guy had, in his senior year at Clemson, 58 receptions, 734 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's pretty darn good, considering like Clemson didn't have the best quarterback in 2017. So it's kind of, he fell in some hard times when he got in the NFL because he tore his ACL in his left knee, like halfway through the first game of the preseason. Like his first preseason game, he tore his ACL and spent the entire season on injured reserve. So he's on IR his entire 2018 season. Last year, he kind of got buried in the depth chart behind, obviously, T.Y. Hilton there in Indianapolis. Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell, Jacoby Brissett didn't help anybody as far as like breaking out as a wide receiver. This year, you'll probably see the Colts do a little better because they got Phillip Rivers there, and he's a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. But I think that somebody like Deon Cain would have benefited a little more from maybe some of that more veteran-type quarterback play. Well, he's going to get it now because he's in Pittsburgh. So look for Deon Cain to make some waves and make some noise here in the room when it comes to all the organized team activities and getting through all the preseason stuff. You could see Deon Cain out there demanding targets just as much as anybody else would in that wide receiver room. So I'm pulling for him. I'm hoping we can maintain just some crazy depth in the wide receiver room. For you fantasy football players out there, it's not necessarily what you want to hear from Pittsburgh wide receivers. There's only so many targets to go around. I know Ben likes to throw the ball a lot, but they might go a little easier on his arm just because of his surgery, and they may not want to push him too much. And as the season progresses, you may see more and more passes from Ben going out there, and that could definitely help out all the fantasy stats for the wide receivers and even the tight end, even our pass-catching running backs out there. Let's see here. Wisniewski was hitting the weights hard and trying to be the best O-lineman he can be before the season starts. Now, there's some things with rookies versus veteran abilities, and he was talking about that, and he said, like, look, we kind of have a veteran advantage when it comes to working out because we know how to work out for what the NFL is going to demand of us. The rookies are kind of going to be a little behind on that, and that's okay. As the season progresses, you're going to see more and more development from even like offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So he kind of talked a little bit about that and how they have a little advantage, and said it was like kind of awkward, like blocking air, and people were looking at him funny, but he's out there doing his thing, and he's making sure that he's ready to go for the season, which I think is pretty cool. You don't hear a lot of media stuff about like your O-lineman or defensive line and stuff like that. Lately, Pittsburgh's defense has been a little more in the media, and I think that's because people understand that Pittsburgh is going to have a really good defense this year. So contract news and things like that for our defensive line matter a lot. All right. According to Steelers Depot, I don't know if you guys have ever seen their website. It's pretty cool. It's got a ton of good stuff on it. I check there a lot for different news and stuff, so I can kind of talk to some stuff for you guys that don't necessarily have time to sit down and look at a computer all the time. You can pop the podcast on and hear what I got to say. So, according to Steelers Depot, offensive lineman Matt Fielder and cornerback Mike Hilton have signed their second-round restricted free agent tenders. Both are up for contract extensions by March. I don't necessarily know that it's going to happen. That's March, like by the end of this football season, going into the next one. We'll see. I'm hoping it does because they're both great players. Now, for those of you that don't know what a RFA tender is, basically for the second round RFA tender, it guarantees 110% of last year's salary. So they're going to make more money than they made last year. They sign the agreement, and basically they go out there and kind of prove themselves. And if they do a good job proving themselves, the better chances they have of getting a contract either with Pittsburgh or getting a contract somewhere else that is maybe a little more valuable if they decide to walk away from Pittsburgh, which I'm hoping they don't because, like I said, they're pretty good players. Mike Hilton's managers, he is managed by Rosenhaus Sports. They're wanting an extension prior to this season, but it doesn't really look like it's going to happen. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, but I don't know, Mr. Hilton, I think you may have to wait and just kind of prove it, which is fine. You have a ton of supporting cast around you. You can look good. I think the whole defense is going to look great. Another website, Still Curtain. I was on there looking at an article about signing Colin Kaepernick. Now, I know this is like a huge like deal with everything going on in the country right now. I personally don't think it's a bad idea to kick the tires on him. Between Mason Rudolph, you got Duck Hodges, JT Barrett, don't forget about him, Paxton Lynch, they're all behind Ben Roethlisberger, obviously. But why not give him a shot? Like, who gives a shit about potential media backlash or praise? Like, who cares? A lot of teams are scared of that, and they don't know what the media expectation is. And I feel like it's a huge danger, and it's part of the blackballing of the Colin Kaepernick. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. I'm not saying it's not a conspiracy. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe he's just not a good quarterback, but the media doesn't portray that. I don't know, but why not kick the tires on him and see what we got? The bottom line is that the guy has potential, but he hasn't played since 2016, so it's a tough road to even make a team. Pittsburgh would be smart to give him a try. Why not? Like, what if he goes out there and shows out and he winds up beating Mason Rudolph for the second spot? Then you're like, well, maybe this guy could be like a good relief for Ben Roethlisberger if the moment would have to come up in the next year or two, which I'm pretty sure it will. So either Pittsburgh's going to have to draft a quarterback or go looking somewhere else. Our cap space doesn't necessarily dictate that we can go out there and sign some veteran that can take over for Ben. We got to develop somebody. And why not make that Colin Kaepernick? I think Pittsburgh should give it a try. Some of you may have differing opinions, and that's fine. That's why they're called opinions. All right. And I think last, I put on Twitter, like, anybody want to hear about anything tonight? I'm going to record. I didn't really put it out a whole lot of time before the podcast was getting recorded. I was kind of just sitting down there watching some TV, and I put it on Twitter. I was like, hey, like, is there anything anyone wants to hear? Please go ahead and respond to that still. I know I'm currently recording, and it's probably about 45 minutes to an hour after I posted it on Twitter, so if you missed this show, that's fine. Go ahead and put something on there. I will talk about it in the next podcast next week. I promise. I'll put it in the show sheet, and I'll make it happen. So tonight, though, we did have one person, our very beloved friend here at the Steelers podcast, and Brian Haar. He's at Brian Haar FF, a.k.a. Meatloaf Wildcat. That's his Corona name. So Meatloaf Wildcat, this one's for you, bud. He wanted to hear a little bit more about how amazing Minkah Fitzpatrick is. I love the dude. I love some Minkah Fitzpatrick. He is awesome. Totally huge. He's the best lockdown safety in the NFL. No, but in all seriousness, dude locked down a whole portion of the field, like I said last week. He had 5 interceptions last year and only 8 passes thrown his way in the last 8 games of the season. Like, come on, dude. You're locking down a whole portion of the field. I understand he said something about maybe I got to talk some smack to get some passes thrown my way. Him and Mike Hilton are just kind of back and forth about it, and that's awesome. Like, friendly competition between the two of them, can't go wrong with that. But I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, like, dude, keep shutting down a portion of the field. Hopefully Pittsburgh finds a way to use you a little better and lets you do a little more of the actual free safety things. That way you can kind of keep teams guessing, and I think that makes our defense a lot better. If we can move him around, let's do it. Pittsburgh, if you're listening, which you're probably not because I'm just a little podcast, and that's okay. But move Minkah around, guys. Let's get the offenses guessing. and maybe we can get Minkah a little more involved in doing some other things. The guy's magic when he's out there and stuff's getting thrown his way. He really enjoys the competition, and it's pretty awesome. I'd like to say overall, like, thanks Miami, nice trade, guys. He was worth every penny of that first round pick. I love him, and I can't wait to see how his second season goes. Now that he's had time to acclimate to the system, and we'll see what defensive coordinator Keith Butler has in store for him. I honestly think, like, let's go. I may reevaluate. The more I talk about the Steelers, the more I'm falling more and more in love with them. I love that I get to deep dive into things that's going on with the teams. I've never been more knowledgeable about the Steelers organization or their players and stuff than I am now. I'm super pumped that I get to do this podcast. Thanks again to the Back Row Fantasy Show for making this happen with the teams. If anybody out there listening is a fan of other teams and they'd like to maybe do their own podcast, I'm going to plug it right now. We're looking for people to cover other teams. Hit us up. Hit me up on Twitter, and I can put you in touch with the Back Row Fantasy Show people. Jeremy Barker's great. He'll maybe ask for a little audition tape sort of thing to send to him to make sure that you don't sound like a complete moron on a mic. And it's not hard to do because I'm on the mic and I'm not the brightest bulb in the strand. So with that being said, guys, I think we are going to finish this show. Thank you so much for listening. Again, subscribe, rate, review. If you want to talk to us on Twitter, we are at backrowsteelers. Also on Instagram at backrowsteelers. If you don't feel like hitting me up on Twitter because you don't have it, that's cool too. Feel free to use the old Gmail. I think even like most of our listeners, I'm sure, have some sort of email, and you can hit me up at backrowsteelers@gmail.com. That's going to do it for the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening. Everyone, take care, stay safe, and stay out of trouble out there. It's easy to get into these days.
Thanks for listening. See you next time on the Back Row Steelers Show.
Minkah Fitzpatrick is huge. He's the best free safety ever known to football. He's the best. There is never going to be a better one. I'm being told, is that correct? Is that correct? I'm being told, yes, he is in fact the best safety in the NFL.